in case there's, all right. Good morning. I'm Mark Allen with Gaper.io, and I'm here today with Chopra, the CEO of Ziplyne, and Efrem Epstein, the CMO. Good afternoon, gentlemen. How you doing?
Good afternoon. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well. Yourself? And how about you, Rome?
Doing really well. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm glad you guys could join us. So to start with, can you both share a brief background of yourselves and your work experience?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of Ziplyne. I've been working in technology for about 5 years. I've worked on a multitude of projects, from creating web applications, mobile applications, managing developers, but really taking it from idea to execution. When I was in grad school, I noticed how my grandfather interacted with technology, and I came up with this concept of how do we iron out these pain points that he's experiencing on top of understanding how to use these technologies. So we took that same concept years later and flipped it to B2B, and now we're known as Ziplyne. And just to share, we just signed our first major enterprise customer. So we're really excited that even during COVID, we're able to close a large deal and take that forward.
Well, congratulations. And how about yourself, Efrem?
Okay, I'll try to get the short version in. I cut my teeth working in the PR agency life, working in the world of PR, and knew ultimately I wanted to get out of that and maybe do something a little bit different, maybe working internally on the corporate side. But it didn't go that linear. I ultimately ended up dabbling in a few other areas, including journalism, including taking several actuarial exams and passing them. Then founded a 501c3 in the mental health advocacy world, and mental health advocacy is still a big side project for me. But then found myself back in the tech world, the fire got lit again, and was CMO with a couple of tech companies, and then met Rome, and ultimately said, yeah, let's work together, and here we are.
Cool. And how long have you been working at Ziplyne?
Working together, I think we've come up on what, 3-4 years now?
Okay, so a while. Cool. So what has been both of your experience with remote employment, both in your previous lives and now that you're working at Ziplyne? What is the policy at Ziplyne?
So, it's interesting because it's been something of a hybrid world for a while. When I first started working, I'm old enough that basically it was very tough, if not impossible, to do work that wasn't in the office. This is before people even had email addresses, let alone all the other tools or cell phones. As a matter of fact, I remember early in my PR career, I had to make some calls to agents or some reporters in Asia, and I had to go back to the office at midnight, 1 a.m. Thank goodness I only lived 10 blocks away to make those calls, because you just really couldn't do any work virtually. Ziplyne is such that we were just beginning to explore a physical space. We have a multi-geographical team, and we were small enough that we were essentially virtual before this, but we were just beginning to explore getting a physical space about the time that COVID hit, and obviously that basically put that plan on ice for a while. I think that the biggest challenge, look, there are benefits to basically working from home, working virtually. But I think the key is, if you're going to work from home, you want to be work from home. You don't want to be living at work. And unfortunately, or you've got to be very, very careful, because if you're not, working from home can turn to living from work, and nobody wants that.
Yeah. So Rome, now that, I know you guys are in the New York City area. So now that, real estate price, corporate real estate has come way down. Are you still entertaining that for post lockdown, or do you think you're going to stay remote?
I think we'll still stay remote, but we'll explore maybe like a co-working angle in the future, like a WeWork or something of that nature. But echoing of what I've said, we're really trying to establish how we can drive the processes remotely from the technical side, and then from the non-technical side, like besides developers for the main business functions. We want to be able to get that exposure, because we're going to be interacting with more customers in person, hopefully, going forward.
Hopefully. Yeah. Well, I have a feeling you'll be interacting with one particular customer a lot more in the near future, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and just out of curiosity, are the majority of your employees in the New York City area, or are they spread out throughout the country or even the world?
Scattered throughout the country as well as then the world. So we have a hybrid model where we have a US based team, and then we have our technical team based in India. So that's how we've just been able to structure it. So you can imagine time zones really don't matter for us because it's always around the clock, continuous, timeless efforts going in. So that's been the current structure thus far, and we're planning to scale both modes in the same way.
Ah, cool. So what is the story behind Ziplyne? What is the product or service that you offer? Who's your target audience? Obviously enterprise customers. So tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. So what we do is we have a software that sits on top of any web application to guide users through step by step and navigate the business applications or business processes effectively. So if you think about the world of SaaS today, there's so many different applications coming out. But the problem is adoption when it comes to the user. So the user has to really understand how to use that software to be able to drive the efficiency of that technology. And the disconnect is that companies want to be able to provide this onboarding, this training, this support, but at a lower cost and something that's scalable. So our technology interacts on top of any software as a layer. Similarly, as you think about a Ziplyne in real life, it takes you from point A to point B. You're not necessarily touching your feet on the ground. You're just going above the surface. So that's why we thought of what a Ziplyne does in real life. What if we apply that same type of concept to SaaS or just software in general, where we're taking a user and helping them understand the how. They know what they want to do, they just don't know how to do it.
Interesting. So do you act like with the development community? Let's say someone's building something in React Native as an example, or any type of React. Would they incorporate yours, or would they, after it's built, they put it on literally on top?
Great question. So there's two models for deployment. One would be if they have the access to the code base, they can embed us through like a JavaScript snippet, and that happens at the end. They could build the whole application and then embed the snippet, and then the non-technical folks can actually create the guides using our point and click extension. Versus if you don't own the code base and like you're using it on top of a product like Salesforce, SAP, Oracle, ServiceNow, Workday, etc., then you can layer it just through an extension and there's no technical requirement whatsoever.
Wow, that's really interesting. So sounds like you're like an chatbot on steroids. Is that a good way to explain it?
You could say that. You could say that. Yes.
You could say that. We play around with a bunch of analogies and have had a number of interesting analogies thrown back at us. As a marketing person, I tend to love acronyms. Some people say I love them a little bit too much. And one acronym that we've been playing around with is, and that plays off Ziplyne and ziplining, is that we're about helping you soar, SOAR. SOAR, support, onboarding, adoption, retention. And one of the things that I think why we like that acronym is that it puts the retention in there. So many times people talk about us where they're saying we're looking to solve the pain point of onboarding and adoption. And no doubt those are important pain points to solve. But onboarding and adoption doesn't mean anything if you don't have retention. So that's one thing that we hammer home. It's not just about onboarding or training new customers, new users, new employees. It's about retaining them. This is lifelong learning. And it's about all that, but retention is probably the most important. The R is probably the most important letter on there.
Interesting, yeah, because if you think about it, I've learned many technologies where I'll read the manual or I'll watch a video, but if you don't use it on a day-to-day basis, you really don't. Yeah, basically you start from scratch if you go back to it 6 months later, right?
Yep.
So your technology really helps the employees of your customers, correct?
Yeah.
That's your target audience is probably the CIO of a company, but you're really benefiting the day-to-day users of their software or even their customers, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. I'd say some of the personas, and Roman can add on there. You mentioned CIOs, absolutely. Customer success managers, business application managers, the people that oversee the Salesforce and the SAPs actually inside the companies. Those are really, who else am I forgetting, Roman? I'd say those are really our big three, the CIOs, the customer success managers, and the business application managers.
Interesting.
And just to add on to that, I would say like digital transformation leaders, folks who are focused on leading those initiatives within an organization, whether it's implementing new software, updating existing ones, those types of roles or responsibilities lend well to a product like Ziplyne.
Yeah, very interesting. So you're a little different than most companies. Most companies were everyone came into the office every day, the traditional model, and then all of a sudden, March 16th, they were remote. You were actually fully remote, looking to go to the traditional model.
Welcome to 2020.
I know, it's like everything's upside down. So, I mean, since you already were remote, did the stay in place order cause you any roadblocks or challenges that you didn't quite expect, or was it pretty much business as usual?
It's pretty much business as usual, but the nuance there is that we needed to understand how we're going to scale this model going forward. And part of it comes down to, because I mentioned before that there's no time zone really, that we're operating in a timeless world, that we need to know who we're interacting with at what time, like what area, and how do we continue to focus them. Mm-hmm. There's so many other responsibilities if you're working from home that have to be managed, but during the time of COVID, there's a lot of other things that just come into priority. So how do you really get the team members involved and keep them incentivized and motivated? That part did get shifted after the pandemic. Like, yes, we had good operations in place before, but then there was some lag because they had to go through different areas, or they had to, especially in India, they were hit in larger parts or in more focused or concentrated areas, and they had stricter rules. So we had to play according to those environments.
Very interesting. So
I'm sorry. I was just going to add on to that. We are a company. It seemed like on March 13th, 14th, a lot of people I know all of a sudden discovered Zoom. We were using Zoom heavily beforehand. However, now Zoom was not just something you did to check in with people 2-3 times a day, work-wise. It was something that you were using for many other things, and we need to be careful so that we did not burn ourselves out. That comes back to what I said earlier, that make it working from home and not living at work. Yes. So that was something we need to be aware of. But if I have to say a positive out of that, is that being that our company is about the dedicated mission of solving the pain points of customer experience and employee experience from others, we were able to understand what it was doing to us and the balance there, and maybe be a better service to our customers, and maybe not change the product so much, but change the framing or understand better. This is how you use it to create the better experience, which is the pain point you're looking to solve, because we understood that pain point even better now, because we were almost part of that. It was our own pain points we were looking to solve. So we basically said, okay, now we understand it, and we're walking the walk so we can talk the talk.
It's funny you mentioned that, because when everything first went to stay in place, I'd used Zoom for years myself. So I felt like I was, the first week or two, it felt like I was basically tech support for Zoom for all of my personal friends. They would all call me, and how do you do this? Zoom probably could have used your solution.
Yeah.
If somebody there wants to give us a call, we will gladly talk with them.
Are you listening? We're open. So, well, gentlemen, I want to thank you for your time. This has been really interesting. You're a little bit different than most companies. It's always good to talk to companies that have different experiences. Rome, it was great talking to you. Efrem, it's always good to talk to a fellow Supertramp fan. And I hope you guys have a great day.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Talk to you later.